Bonjour tout le monde. Good evening, guys. Welcome once again to another class. We're on the third week. Third week, second week. I forgot. Um, so I just first of all just wanted to. I hope everybody had a great weekend. I know Johnny was out in Vermont with the family. I hope that went well. Um, However, I did not hear from anyone regarding the dates for the exams. I heard from Simone asking me today about the link. I really hope, you guys, that you work on it this week to set up a date, because as of now, we're getting um, pretty far out dates for this test, and it's kind of a big concern because, as I said, people is waiting. From the previous classes, they went to the last minute, and then they have to wait a month after the class finished to go and take the exam, and then that kind of screws them up. So, I kind of learned to schedule it in a way that people can go into the test or into the exam with fresh knowledge. Okay, so I'm not sure if anyone has any questions regarding last week's class, if anyone did any review of the class over the weekend. Otherwise, we're gonna go right in and start with today's class. Okay, so I just wanna go over really quick about what we went over last week. Let me just bring you guys over with me, just so you guys can remember where we ended up. Okay, so here we are. I That's what we're gonna be seeing today, but I just want to go really quick about last week's class. So last week we ended up talking. This is what we did. So remember, we're talking about possessory states and non-possessory states. Okay, so we spoke about the freehold and the leasehold. So freeholds, most of the time when we're talking about ownership of something, like someone had ownership. However, this freehold can be in different ways. It can be uh, through a life state or through a legal life state, or it can be in a state of a fee simple defeasible, meaning, remember, defeasible means condition. So we spoke about that part, and we spoke about the different situations. And I kept saying throughout the class, throughout the week, that the reason why we need to know about this as agents is because someone is going to come to us and says, oh, I have a house, or I have a property that I want to sell. And then when you are looking through paperwork, you're going to see certain situations. Most likely when you are actually have a buyer that wants to buy a property, you're going to go and show properties around, and you go and show a property of a customer with your client. And when your client likes the property, the house, and then they say, yeah, I want to close, then when they send the paperwork, your attorney is going to call you and say, listen, we have an issue here, because this is a life state. This is an ordinary life state. So this person is going to need the um how you call it, the authorization from the actual owner in order to sell the state, in order to sell the property. So you're gonna have to, speak to your client and tell them this is what's going on, and this is what they have. Yeah. So this is the reason why we need to learn this part. This is the reason why, sometimes you find some questions in the test, and this is the reason why we are explaining it in the class. Um, so we spoke also about something really important that usually comes out on the test is the eminent domain. That is what I was explaining to you guys, that it's when the government expropriates someone's property to do some sort of for public use, to build an airport, to expand the highway, or that kind of stuff. Okay, so eminent domain, very important for you guys to remember those two words. Then we went from freehold to leasehold, and leasehold separate those two words. Lease means from leasing or from what we normally know as renting, right? And then you have two parts. You have the lessor and the lessee. Lessor, as also we mentioned, lessor is the person that gives because it end up on or, and lessee, sorry, is the person that receives. Okay, there were five types of leasehold estates, and we mentioned state for years, which what you guys need to remember is that it has a specific beginning and a specific end. So it's from May 1st, 2021 to April 30, 2022. It has a beginning and an end established on the actual contract, okay? And usually doesn't have a renewal. The periodic tenancy is the same as stay for years, but with no termination date, and it renews automatically. Tenancy at will is, as when you're talking about a will, someone's will, is because they don't, there's no specific termination, and the person, uh, there's no regular rental period. People can live there without paying money. Let's say when your son comes back to live with you, all right? And tenancy at sufferance. So if it's suffering, that means something bad is happening, right? So we use that sufferance to remember that this is when someone is not paying the rent, okay, and staying in the property without the permission of the owner. Then we jump into the non-possessory interest, and I kept mentioning the word encumbrance and I kept using this image. It was something on top, something that doesn't let you be yourself, something that doesn't allow you to have full control of what you're able to do. And we refer to three type of non-possessory interests or encumbrances: the easements, the encroachment, and the adverse possession. We spoke about the easements and a few of them: the easement in gross, the appurtenant easement, the easement by prescription, the easement by necessity. Okay, and we also spoke about the ways how you can terminate an easement, and this is also a very important phrase, the adverse possession. We went over it, and we mentioned that a person needs at least 10 years in a place. I mean, occupying a certain parcel of land that doesn't belong to him, obviously, for that person be able to claim it. Okay, in court, of course. Okay, so we spoke about the encroachments. That it was when a section of your property it's been used somehow, either by air rights, like in the cases of the roof or the trees, or simply by moving a fence. Okay, can be a type of encroachment. Then we went to talk about what was, I think it was towards the end of the week, Thursday, that we started talking about liens and how they can be. It can be voluntary or involuntary, general or a specific. Okay, we spoke about a few different ones. Okay, and we defined which one was voluntary, involuntary, and why. What makes it that involuntary or voluntary or general or specific. Also very important, the lien priority. We spoke about that in the event of a foreclosure, for example, the first lien that needs to get paid is the tax lien. Then everything else goes in depending on what was put on the property first. So if it was a mortgage, then the mortgage gets paid first. If it was a mechanic lien, then the mechanic lien, and then the mortgage. Okay, but the first thing that needs to get paid is the tax lien. Okay, we spoke at the end of the week also about the deed and device, about ways on how ownership of a property is created throughout a deed, which is the actual document, which we usually call title, and device, which is when someone passes away, they leave their property either by a will or it end up on the heirs of that person by law, right? Um, we spoke about the way also how we call when someone owns a property by itself, this ownership in severalty, and when it's owned by more than one person, which we call co-ownership. This is when we saw the video of tenancy in common, joint tenancy, and tenancy by the entirety. Okay. We spoke about the unities of interest and how these conditions define what kind of co-ownership is it that a person may have. Very important that you guys remember that tenancy by the entirety is the only one that needs to have that last unity, or whether the person or what we saw in the video, they define it as marriage. Okay, that's the only one that applies to a married couple, tenancy by the entirety. Okay, I also sent you guys this. I sent you the copy of the PowerPoint presentation. We also spoke to define that not only persons, individuals, humans, let's say, can own a property, also corporations. So we have an LLC, a corporation, a real estate investment trust, and it was defined that, I think it was in one of the questions of the quiz, through that we were saying, I think the question was if a corporation was a co-ownership, legally, what is it considered, a co-ownership or a tenancy by the entirety? And since we consider corporation one, it is considered as a tenancy by the entirety. Okay, as one, let's say. Okay, we spoke about trust at the end too, and how it works. Who is the trustor, which is the person that gives a property, let's say, to a trustee for the benefit of a third person, in this case, the beneficiary. Okay, wow, I feel like we covered a lot last week. So we spoke about the contracts too, the different type of contract, how are contracts to be valid, what things need to come into fruition. We spoke about the competent parties, the mutual agreement that has to happen, the consideration, okay, lawful and possible objective, the description of the property in this case, right? And that has to be in writing and signed in the state of New York. Okay, so let me see what else we spoke. Okay, we spoke about when someone breaches a contract, the different type of contract, unilateral, bilateral, express or implied. Okay, the different type of contract, when a contract is valid, one is void, and one is voidable. The different type of essences, we remember of essences, the different type of clauses that we can see in a contract, specifically in sales contracts for property. We have the as-is, we have the escape clause, the contingency clause, and time is of the essence. Okay, so this is the part that, this was the end, I believe, last week, where we're looking at pictures, well, not pictures, but copies of listing agreements, buyer agency agreement, and right to rent agreement. We saw this at the very beginning of the class. Remember, I sent you that contract that I also posted online. All right, so we're gonna just finish up the part of the contracts today to continue with the class. And so we're gonna define, well, not define, but go over a few things regarding the leasehold part, the leasehold states. And as you know, I repeat this one. Oops. All right, so let me go here. We're gonna be talking about the types of leases, okay? Because you may not be only working with residential clients. You may have commercial clients too. So it's important that you know the kind of leases that a person may be wanting to get. So depending on the situation, you can have a net lease. And what we call a net lease is as a lease where the person will have to pay one of the following: either taxes and the gross rent, either insurance and the gross rent, or either maintenance and the gross rent. What does that mean? That means that, let's say Johnny comes to me and says, Manny, I want to rent my store, but I want to rent it so that the person pays the taxes and pays me an extra $2,000. I will pay for the insurance, and I will, pay for the maintenance. So it asked me that, so I go and put the store for list, and then the person that comes, the potential tenant, I explain, listen, you're gonna have to pay the taxes. So we figure out how much the taxes are gonna be, and then he is in charge of paying that. Johnny doesn't have to worry about that part. All right. So it can either happen with taxes, it doesn't have to be with taxes, it can also happen with insurance, or it can happen with maintenance. Okay. So in these cases, net lease, most of the time when it's properties that are like standalone buildings, usually it's either triple net, which we're gonna see in a few seconds, and or maintenance. Uh, you tell the tenant, listen, you're gonna pay me $2,000 a month, and I'm gonna pay taxes and insurance, property insurance. Okay, property insurance, because you have two insurances in the building. You have the property insurance for the whole building, which is the owner puts it in place for the building, and then you have what they call the business insurance. That's for the tenant. The tenant pays for that one. All right. But when the tenant pays for the whole property insurance of the business for the benefit of the owner, then that's the kind of insurance we're talking about. Okay, so we call it net lease because it only covers one of uh, these three items that we're talking about. We also have what they call percentage lease. Okay, well, before I go to percentage, let me just go over. Let me see if it shows here. No, okay, so we have net lease when we take one. If the person decides, Johnny says to me, listen, I want a tenant that pays for the insurance and maintenance of the building, and I'm gonna pay for the taxes, and I want them to pay me something extra. So in this case, since it's taking two, we call it net lease. So it's net, it's just an expression to refer to two of these items that are gonna be covered. Now the most common one, which is the one that like franchises have, let's say a Burger King building, a building that has McDonald's, a building that has Taco Bell, is what they call a triple net lease. So it's net lease or triple net. And that means that the owner, well, the tenant, it's taking care of the taxes for the building, the insurance for the building, and the maintenance. So they're doing everything. And on top of that, they're giving money, for the rent, for regular rent to the owner. So the owner literally can be around the world traveling, and every month that he gets his portion of the rent, well, his full rent, and he doesn't have to worry about the maintenance of the building. He doesn't have to worry about insurance. He doesn't have to worry about taxes because they pay for everything. It's one of the best deals that property owner can get. Okay. So, but usually happens with the standalone buildings, which are the buildings that are sitting by themselves. This is why I'm mentioning franchises that have their buildings in a corner, for example, what they own or they have possession of the whole lot. Okay. Uh, so for them, it makes more sense because let's say McDonald's can hire the same maintenance company for 7 or 8 of their locations around, in the same community, and save money on that. The same thing with the insurance; they can have an insurance that covers, say, 6 or 7 locations. Okay, and with the taxes, also, if they pay the taxes, they can get it off their business um, expenses at the end of the year. So it's a good deal for them. All right. So now what we have, the next thing we have is what we call percentage lease, and percentage comes from percentage, right? But this refers to, I don't know if you guys ever walked into a mall and you see these little tiny stores with these kind of weird products, and you are like, wow, how come in the same mall where you have, the most fancy store, the most fancy jewelry stores, you have these tiny little stores selling this weird stuff that no one knows about, and there's no one in there. Like, you wonder, how did they get in there? Well, it's most likely because what we call a percentage lease, and this is uh, it's a kind of lease that allows for a tenant to move into a place and pay very little rent, but also it's gonna pay a percentage of the sales that that person makes or that company makes. So let's say they make an agreement where they do what they call a breakpoint. So breakpoint is, let's say I say to Simon, Simon, I'm gonna allow you to open your um, handmade sneaker store in the mall. But when you every after you make more than let's say $20,000 in sales the month, everything after that, you're gonna give me you're gonna give me 25% of your or whatever you make after that, after the 20,000. So that way the mall gets all that. So if they're the business is successful, then the mall's making a killing on that, and then at the same time they're gonna pay a little bit of rent, but they're gonna be able to establish themselves over there. So that's what we call a percentage lease. Usually, as I say, it happens with retail in this kind of places, malls, shopping centers, and that kind of stuff. All right. Now, land lease is the one that um, usually, let's say you have an empty lot somewhere, and a developer comes and says, "Listen, I have um, I have a client that has Wendy's all over the country, and he uses me as a developer to build his stores. So I saw your land, and I would like to lease it from you. Okay, so I want to get a land lease from you. So what he's gonna do is that he's gonna take the land, raw land with nothing on it. He's gonna take it, he's gonna develop it, he's gonna build the whole nice Wendy's, for example. He's gonna have someone come to run the Wendy's, and then the developer gets paid by the person that is taking over the Wendy's. Then the guy that takes over the restaurant, in this case, start paying the owner of the land. Okay, and then the owner of the land, he just it's a win-win because he didn't have to pay anything for doing the build out of the property, and he's getting rent now. And when this person leaves, which usually is 25, 15 to 25 years leases, but when they leave, then you know it's not like they can take the building with them. So that's what a land lease is about. Okay. Then we have what we call a graduated lease. Graduated, something that gradually goes up. In this case, means that the lease can start this year at $100, right? And you start slow, you start low, and then as the years go by, then you start bringing it up 5%, which is between 3 and 5, the most common raises for leases. But let's say Johnny wants to open a barbershop, and I show him a place, and he says, "Well, it's a barbershop, it's a new location, and I'm gonna need time to build it up, and I'm gonna need also time for the people to set up the point, for people to know that I'm there, start bringing clients." So he's gonna ask me for a very low rent at the beginning. But since I know that with the time he's gonna become famous, he's gonna start making more money. So I want to protect myself for the future. So what I do is I give him a rent for, let's say, $1,000 a month, and for the first year. Then next year it goes up 5%. So next year you have 1,050. Then next year it goes to another 5%. So it goes up, it goes up, it goes up until it becomes to an actual rent for the actual market. Um, all right. So those are the type of leases, commercial leases, of course. So net lease can be net lease with one of these items, net lease two items, and triple net leases when it covers all three items. If none of these items are covered, then it's what we call gross. So you know the difference between net and gross. And when there is no net, that means it's a gross lease, which means the person only pays the rent, and then the landlord, the owner, has to pay for all these three items. Okay, gross, lease. Um, okay, so today we're gonna start talking a very interesting subject, which is called valuation. Okay, so valuations. Uh, Valuation comes from value, of course, but this part is important because it defines the value, of course, but the how much people want something, and how we also can. We're gonna be learning in this subject how to figure out how much a property it's worth, not based on what a person thinks, but based on what the market is saying. Okay, so valuations can be affected by the GPS. The GPS, I like to use the GEPS. I have a video for this, but it's in Spanish, so I'm just gonna tell you. The G stands for geographic, the E for economic, the P for political, and the S for social. Okay, so you want to take note, I'm going to repeat it once again. So G stands for geographic location. Okay, it's not the same property in Florida or in Arkansas or Alabama or somewhere than in Manhattan. The same property with the same materials, but the geographic location can give different values to that property. Okay, so that's what we say. The valuation can be affected by the geographic location of a property, the economical situation. Of course, the values of a property goes up and down depending of the economic time. So, like right now, we were seeing very low rates, so people had more access to loans, more access to money. Therefore, they were taking the jump to buy, make a commitment to buy a property. And the properties were already high in terms of price, and that brought the prices even more, but also the valuations of the property. Okay. Remember when we were talking about in the first chapter about supply and demand and how that affected uh, the prices of the valuation. If if there is a new opening of job somewhere, of a factory, how those prices are going to go up, how the value of those properties are going to go up. Think about California, with all like the places around Silicon Valley. They say that it's almost impossible to think about buying something there at a reasonable price because there's no such a thing there anymore. So many people is moving there or moved there, that it's the demand is up to the sky. So that brings the value of those properties really, really high. The political scenario also, it doesn't really, um, in this case, it's not talking about Democrats and uh, and Republicans specifically. It's talking about all the politics, all the laws that, let's say, the government can pass and somehow can affect the valuations of the property. Okay, so like think about the first a few years ago they came up with the first time homebuyer grant or something like that. It's like a federal grant for people that were buying their first houses, um, and many people took it, many people decided. So that actually brought up the demand of the properties, because many people were using this in order to take jump and buy a house. Okay, and the social, it's also very important that it's represented by the S, and it refers to the fact that all of us as social beings, we move around. So depending on our situation, um, when 6 7 years ago, I wanted to be, where the action was, I was single, I wanted to take the world, and I wanted to be in Astoria, Queens, right? I wanted to be a place where I could go out every night if I needed to. Uh, you know, that's all at the time what I was thinking. As I got married, as I had my first child, then I started thinking more like about family, and like I didn't care much about the life that I had before. Not that it was bad, but I'm saying it's like my mentality changed. So I'm not thinking about being single and all that stuff and all that, all what that brought, all the demand of living in a apartment or studio, and with the noise, with the crowd and all that stuff. Now you're looking for something more quiet. You're looking, or you want to move to an area where there is more families, where there is more people like you. So when that happens pretty much to everyone because we get older, right? So there is a change in location. So then you want to go to a place, and usually you move to a place where there are more families, okay? Because that's what you want to be around in this specific time. So this GEPS, this is what they stand for. Okay. Now the valuations can also be affected by what we call value characteristics, and they can be the demand, the utility, the scarcity, and the transferability. Okay. So the demand, as you know, we spoke about quite a few times already in this class about how the desire of a property can bring up his price. If more people wants to move to this location, like I move out of Queens, for example, because as I said a few minutes ago, my mentality changed. But there are other generations that are coming up, the kids coming out of college that want to be there because they are not thinking where I'm thinking. I already went through that. So they want now, they are the one demanding the places where I lived before. Okay. So that's what's going on. So there is always a demand for something. Then they're going to be the one demanding the places where I am today when they decide to form a family. Okay. The utility of something, the like, think about how we keep seeing all these um, news about Amazon, for example, that they're running out of space for warehousing, and they will need warehousing, and that's something. Think about how many factories that we had all over the country that uh, became a ghost town, like because people, all these jobs were sent to China, and now all those big factories that were built for workers to go there, now they are being used for something else. They destroy them to build like residential locations, community, gated communities, and all that stuff. But we still have many of those buildings. So think about that utility. The utility, until a few years, we didn't have any use for those buildings. Right now, you know, with the need, with the demand for those buildings, then we're finding a new type of use for them. And this is what we refer when we talk about utility. Um, However, as we use those buildings, the more and more, then we're going to end up with the scarcity of those kind of products, that kind of property. Okay. And it's the scarcity of it that is going to bring his price up. Okay. If we had a lot of it, like we may have now, then okay, we can play with the price. The valuations are not sky high, but as the supply of it starts going down, then the scarcity of that type of property is going to kick in, bringing its price up. The transferability of a product. When I say product, I mean a property. So the transferability, it refers also to the fact that um, in the winter time, it's cool to have a warehouse in Florida, for example. You have a warehouse where it's fine, you can be okay. It's almost the same weather. Well, not almost, but the weather is fine all year round. Let's say fine. But then if you have the same warehouse in New York, then you have to fight or deal with the winter time. This long winter sometimes, and There is no way you can transfer that property, the same property that you have in Florida, transferred to New York, if you're using it for the purpose of a warehouse, for example. Okay, so it's good to have it in New York because maybe you can easily send products up to Canada, for example. You don't have to come all the way from Florida. Okay, but the fact that it the process, the use of it gets slowed down. You probably spend a lot of money in the winter time to heat it up because the bad winter situation then makes it maybe not as valuable as the one in Florida, which you can use all year round. And that lack of transferability is what probably affects the value of both buildings. Talking about it from a commercial standpoint. Okay. So these are the value characteristics when we talk about valuations. There are three, when we refer to a product, to a property, we can refer, when we talk about valuation, we talk about it in three ways. So we have what we call the market value, which is what a person will pay for something. We have what we call the market price, which is the actual price a person paid meaning the person already bought it. And so there's a difference between these two. Okay. Uh, so a property can go in the market, let's say for 500,000. That's the asking price. So Simon comes to me and says, "Manny, I wanna put my apartment in the market, and I think it's worth $500,000." Okay, that's what you think is worth. That's what you want. All right. So let's go with that because remember that I have to be obedient. It's one of my duties as an agent. I try to explain to her based on what we're gonna be seeing in a few minutes, the type of valuation, that maybe the price is a little bit too high, but at the end of the day, she's my client and she decides. So she said, "I want to put it for 500. I think that's the value of the property." So people, we have people coming to look at it. You have three people every day looking at it, right? And then finally, by the end of the week, a person comes and puts an offer, says, "All right, I know it's worth. I mean, the asking is 500, but I'm gonna offer 450." And then Simon says, "Oh, you know what? Nah, I think I can do maybe 490." And the guy says, "No, I give you 460." And Simon says, "You know what? 475." The guy says 475. Okay, so we close the deal 475. So the market price at the end was 475. Okay, because that's what the person ended up paying for at the end of the day. So that's the difference between the two. One is the actual price that a person paid for it, not what an owner will assume that you know the value of something was. Because the thing with valuation is that many times we add value to things. Like think about the house where you were born. I mean, where you were born, where you were raised, since you were a kid. That house, that property has a special meaning for your family, for your father, for your mother, for you. But listen, the house probably is not worth $1 million. It's probably worth for you. It doesn't have a price for you. Okay, but that doesn't mean I mean, for everybody else. It's it's different. For everybody else, it's the market value, the market price. So that's something that we need to sometimes deal with. We need to fight with our clients, not fight, but try to explain to them the realities of the market. Okay. Uh, we have the definition of cost, which is money needed to develop, produce, or build something. So, of course, the cost of something, if we see wow, what's the cost of this property? We're talking about how much did it cost to build it. Cost and price is not the same. Okay. Now we have, at the beginning of the class, we were talking about a few, how are we doing time-wise? 8:40, okay, we have a few minutes. So we were talking about who doesn't need a license. And one of those people that don't need a license that we mentioned was the appraisal. And the appraisal is, appraisal. Yeah, well, the appraisals are made or are done by performed or licensed real estate appraisals. So to become a real estate appraisal, you have to take you know, course to become a real estate appraisal and be certified in the New York State. So they go to your property, they go through the whole house or building. They take notes of all the stuff that you have, including the the stuff in your utility room, you know, the boiler, the hot water heater, the type of heat that you have. They go all the way to the attic to see the kind of ventilation that you have, all that stuff. So they make a very thorough examination or inspection of your property, okay, to see the kind of material that was used and how old that material is, depending on how old the house is. And then they do an investigation of the neighborhood. You know, they go on public records, see what was the last thing. And when they take all that information under consideration, then they tell you, well, based on my use, my knowledge, blah, blah, then I can think, I can assume, let's say, that my opinion of knowledge is, my opinion of value for this particular property is 500 or 600 or 700. Okay, so that's what an appraisal do. However, when a client comes to us and says, oh, you know, I want to sell my house, but I'm not sure about how much I should sell it for, then, you know, if you always have to hire an appraisal, and it's a little bit of an expense up front. So as agents, we all the technology that is available right now. We have the right to perform what we call a CMA analysis, or a competitive market analysis. Okay, and it's based on different methods. Okay, so before we jump to that, we're gonna see also, we're gonna be talking about three different approaches for appraising a property. One is called the sales comparison, the cost, the cost approach, and the income approach. We're gonna be seeing each one of those throughout this subject. How we doing time-wise, guys? Okay, we still have a few minutes. Okay, I'm gonna at least go through the first one, which is this one. So, sales comparison approach, very, very down to earth. So, sales comparison. What you do is that, let's say we have this property here. Okay, this is, let's say Johnny comes to me and says, Manny, I have this house and I want to sell it, but I don't know how much I should sell it with. Can you please help me? I say, okay, let's see what you have. So we go and see the house. Okay, this is the house you have. So then I go on public records. Okay, as I said, right now it's different because we have all these computerized systems that allow us to do this without going crazy. You can do this in 5 minutes, maybe less. Okay, before you have to actually go into the county where you live, and or the village or the town, and pull out records of the last sales that were done and compare it and do the comparison between that and what you're trying to sell. So right now, this is all done online with a system. So this is how the system works. So this is Johnny's house, and I need to get a price for it. And if I am gonna use a sales comparison approach, what I do is that I see the most recent sales of properties in the area. And of course, not all houses are the same. Okay, so what I do is that I look at the most similar ones. And if I get one like comparison number one that is missing one garage, then what I do is that I add more to the base. So for example, this comparison one doesn't have a garage. It says it's missing something. So I must add more to make equal to base. Okay. So let's say comparison number one, the value is 190,000, and I add 5,000 for missing garage. That means that this property sold for 190, but since it's missing a garage, I figure that the cost of building a garage to that property is $5,000. So I add that, and the final opinion of value for this particular property with the garage will be 195,000. Then I go to this one, the second one. So the sales comparison approach tells us that we need to use at least three comparison properties. Okay, so we're gonna use on the second one, it's identical, right? It's the same, so I don't have to adjust anything. There's no adjustment because it's equal to the base. This is the base, remember. So equal to the base, so do not adjust anything. So we have comparison number two. The value of that property, the one what it sold for is 197,000. So that's gonna be my final opinion of value on the second one. The third one has an extra garage. So as you can see, the base has only one garage, and the third comparison has 2-car garage. So it says has more, so must subtract to make equal to base. So since I already used the $5,000 garage cost, the cost of building a garage, I use the number of 5,000. Then I'm gonna take that 5,000 from the price. So then I have, it was 206, it sold for 206. So I'm gonna take that $5,000 off for the extra garage, and it's gonna come down to 201. So then when I have these three prices, these three sell price, remember this is what this property sold for right here, the 190, the 197, and the 206, but I'm adjusting it to make it equal to the base. Okay, because I cannot compare a person that is missing an arm with a person that has the 2 arms. I'm sorry for the example, but then I have here 195, 197, and 201. All three properties have been adjusted. And now what I do is that I take the average of all three, okay, and that's gonna give me the price that I'm gonna use for the base. This is the price that I'm gonna suggest my client, your client, that he should list his property for, okay, based on the comparisons of the area. Okay, that's how it works, the sales comparison approach. So let me see. Okay, so it's 8:48. We're gonna continue with this sales comparison approach and the cost and the income approach tomorrow. Does anyone has any questions right now? Simone, Johnny?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, hold on one second. Listen in.
So when you're doing the CMA, you
Yes.
said you use, as agents, you have access to resources. What resources are you using?
All right, so you're gonna be part of the MLS, the multiple listing services, remember? So when you become an agent, and multiple listing services has tools, like the same way you go online and you can post your, you call it, your property in, you can also go online and check every single agent in New York State. You're gonna see their properties too. You're gonna see what they sold. You're gonna see what have sold in your county, in your area in the last 10 years, for example. So you wanna go to, let's say, the last 6 months, what sold in the last year in your area. You're gonna see 7 properties, and it's gonna like place it right next to each other. And it gives you the option to choose which one you wanna use to compare to your base. Once you do that, automatically it will come up with the average price of all the properties that have sold recently in your area.
Okay, awesome. I didn't realize the MLS gives you all of those tools as well.
Yeah, they build it up in a way that you all you have to do is talk talk to your client. Okay, does anyone has any questions? Any more questions? Okay, so let's Let me just come here. Okay, so I am opening. How are we doing with the? I forgot. I'm sorry. Also, this weekend, I was a little bit busy. I didn't have much chance to work on the quizzes with you guys, but we will work on that. Everybody's doing good with the quizzes. Johnny. Let me see. So today we're gonna be doing. All right, let's work. Let me see. Did we do? Okay. Hold on. So I think last week we did contract. We did 7-8, right? Yep, we did 7-8. Did we do 7-8?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Always on point. All right, so let's jump to 7B. I don't want to jump to valuation because we did 10% of it today. So okay, hold on. Okay, perfect. Beautiful. Here we go. All right, guys. Let's just jump here with me. I have someone chatting. Is that coming up, catching up? Okay, great. All right, so let me open here. Here we go. Perfect. I'm opening the chat, guys. This is the first question of the night. Okay, Zach is going. This is from actually today. We spoke about at the beginning of the class. Zach is going to college. His parents signed a 4-year lease for an apartment on campus. The first year, the rent is $450 per month. Each year, the rent will increase by $50 per month. What kind of lease is this? Simone says A. I have an A. Carol says A. I have an A. I have two A's. I have two A's. Anyone with a B, anyone with a C, anyone with a D, anyone with a C. Johnny. Okay. He going once. He going twice. I'm gonna go with the A. Okay, we have an A. Johnny's. All right, Johnny. Okay, great. We have the first one of the night. Now, Sarah and Beth have a signed purchase agreement. There is time. Okay, listen to this one. This is interesting. So Sarah and Beth have a signed purchase agreement. There is a time is of the essence clause in the contract stating that the transaction must close by April 5th because Sarah is moving. Beth is having trouble getting the mortgage company to secure the loan by that date. If they don't close by April 5th, the contract is, I have a D from Simon, who has an A. Anyone with a B? Did I hear someone with a C? So I have two Ds. I have a D. I have two Ds. I have three Ds. 3D. I have three Ds. Anyone with a D? Okay, I'm going with a D. D going once. Incorrect. The answer is C. C. All right, let's go over this one. You guys says voidable. Now remember here, let me just go to the, oops, right here. Let me go here. So we are on the same page. Voidable right here. All right. So voidable contract. It says a contract that may be voided by the parties without legal consequences. Okay. That's the one you guys chose. but the answer was void. Let's see what void says. Void says a contract that has no legal force or effect. Any contract that is missing one or more of the essential elements of a valid contract. So going back to the question. So we have here, well, it says when time is of the essence stated in the contract. The contract is void as soon as the deadline passes. The only way to save the contract would be for the buyer and seller to mutually agree to extend the contract before the expiration date passes. So when you said that the contract is voidable, you're saying that it can be how you call it? It can be it cannot be enforced by either one. Like they both can say no, I don't, I don't want to go ahead with the transaction, either of the parties. In this case, the buyer is the one that couldn't do what she was supposed to, which is get the mortgage on time. Therefore, the time passed. It says if they don't close by April 5th. So it's basically saying, what if if something doesn't happen by April 5th? The contract is going to be void. It's not going to work. That's it. There is no way, it's no consequences for neither one. All right. Oh, shoot. Hold on one second. Resume quiz. I'm going to go with the next one. Identify which of the following is not a requirement for a valid contract. Which of the following is not a requirement for a valid contract? I have acceptance, accordance, satisfaction, consideration, lawful, and possible objective. All right, Simone says B. I have a B from Simone. She says that for a contract to be valid, you don't need accord and satisfaction. Okay. Do I have an A? Do I have a C? Do I have a D? Carol says C. I have a C and a B. I have a C and I have a B. Johnny says C. So I have 2 C's and 1 B. Anyone? Okay. So I guess I'm going to go with the majority wins. So 2 C's. I'm going to go with the C's. Incorrect. Okay. Remember, you do need a consideration. Okay. For a contract to be valid, you need something that has to be given in exchange. So it can be money, it can be something else. Okay. What is not a requirement for a valid contract is that there is accord and satisfaction. Okay, that happens after, and it's only optional. Doesn't have to happen. Maybe the contract gets broken in the middle. All right. So let's go to the next one. Larry bought a house on a land contract. Okay. We didn't talk about. Did we talk? Well, we didn't. We talk about land lease. It's not the same. Okay. So a land contract, it's when you, let's say, Johnny comes to me and says, okay, Manny, I want to buy your house, your property, to make it a farm, okay? But I do not have the money right now. So I said, okay, don't worry, that's fine. So I said to him, listen, I'm gonna give you use of the property, and you're gonna pay me money for like I'm gonna give you a mortgage, kind of mortgage, but you're gonna have use of the property, but I'm not gonna give you title of the property until you pay everything off. Okay, so it's like what we call rent to buy kind of thing. But in this case, you own the property, you have possession of the property, you can do whatever you need, but you don't have an actual title of the property. So when you pay everything off, then I will give you title. Okay. So let me see if you guys can more or less, based on what I just said, have an opinion of what you think this answer would be. Larry bought a house in a land contract. On this contract, Simon says B, that the person will not have to pay any interest charges. Johnny says A, that this person has equitable title in the property. I'm sorry, equitable interest. Okay, someone has a C, a D, I have an A and a B. Larry bought a house on the land contract. Under this contract, and Carol says A. So I'm going with the A. Let's see. Correct, the answer is A. Under land contract, the buyer will not receive title to the property until it is paid off. The buyer holds equitable interest in the property until then. So equitable interest is like when you start paying something, you start getting money. You know, you're like when people says, "Oh, the equity on your house is what you have already paid in on your mortgage loan." You know, part of the principal is money that you pay into your house. So that becomes equitable interest. The same thing happens here. Even though you don't get a title, you do get equitable interest on the property because all that money is going towards, you know, the purchase of the property. All right, let's do the last one of the night, guys. Barry has offered to sell his condo for $120,000. Andy wants to buy Barry's condo, but he offers Barry's $116,500 for it. Barry responds to Andy's offer and says he won't accept less than $118,000 for it. What is this an example of? Assignment, capacity, contingency, or counteroffer? Simon says D, counteroffer. Johnny says D, counteroffer. Carol says D, counteroffer. We're going with the D. Correct. Perfect. Okay, guys, that's it for tonight. We are almost there, guys. We're almost there. So work on that. Try to get those dates for that exam, the New York State exam, and back to business. Okay, guys, have a great night, and I will be in touch.